What's up, nerds? Brandon and Jimmy here from Nerd Alert, and it is time for the segment that never ends, keeps returning, Marvel movie news.
Can you believe that? There was a time in our lives where it was like, Marvel movie news, Fantastic Four by Roger Corman. But now it's like, dude, we got news.
Man, and it's, you know what? It's been quiet for a little bit.
How many Marvel movies were released this year, Brandon?
We had one. We had a single one. And before the comments say Venom or Craven or Madam Web, no, we're talking about the MCU.
I tried to watch Madam Web, and I only know her from the 90s cartoon, so she was cool. And they start me in a forest with Spider-Man, and I'm like, I'm out. I can't do this shit. Nope.
I do think that should be the next one we watch as a group, because I think it's safe to say that like it's the one that we can all kind of go into semi-blind. But yeah, let's talk about the good stuff.
Both are legal here, so that might be what we do.
So let's start with let's start with some positives. We do have 3 movies coming out next year, as well as Daredevil.
Oh yeah,
correct.
Is it weird to say like I'm excited for all of those, but I think I'm most excited for Daredevil?
I mean, I can't wait to rewatch the other seasons of Daredevil to get excited for this, because I can just, it stands solid, and I hope the rewatch stands.
I've watched them relatively recently within the last year, and to me, Daredevil and Punisher, not Defenders, really hold up.
I mean, it's so cool to have that, because Daredevil has always been one of my favorite Marvel characters, and to have something that stands up that we're going to continue on has me super excited. That's Marvel shows. I don't know off the top of my head if they're releasing any other shows next year. You have to figure Ironheart's coming along at some point.
Well, that's one of the things that why we're bringing this up is they are solidifying their future, and I'm assuming a lot of this has to do with the Kang issue, and they obviously are moving away, or have moved away from Kang, and now they're going to focus more on the Secret Wars and getting rid of the dimensional stuff that we've introduced. So we are getting into anything that doesn't have to do with this main timeline that they're creating is kind of going by the wayside. Now, that doesn't count things that have already been made. So, like, I'm sure people are like, well, how much is Brave New World's going to tie in? It's like, it was already made. Shut up. I have no idea, but it was already made.
Yeah, but like also nothing in the advertising for Brave New World feels like they're touching the multiverse at all. This is a regular stand-in story. We're establishing Sam as Captain America in this timeline and this world and everything. And I'm excited for that. I think this is going to be a good movie. I've heard mixed reviews so far, but even at their worst, I still think Marvel's been good.
One of the things I like about this that people just really hammer and they get down on like it's going to be a bad movie is they did a lot of reshoots. And to me, that's a good thing, because you saw whatever final product, rough product you had, you realized it wasn't what you wanted, so you went back and fixed it. That to me is a positive thing. Like, anybody
100%.
remember Rogue One, they showed it and they're like, this sucks. We need to go back. And Tony Gilroy came in from Bourne Identity and rewrote the ending, and they refilmed it. And now it's one of the best Disney Star Wars movies out there. So to me,
1,000%.
Like, oh, that sucked, we need to fix it. It's not the old days where it's like, we need to fix this because it sucked and we're just going to try and make some money off it. No, I really think, especially with Marvel, they're trying to make it so it fits whatever vision they have, so that it's good and it's not just, oh, we're going to make some money.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. The fact that they're going back, I mean, they could have gone back and not reshot it. You know what I mean? So the fact that they're looking to give us a product that we're all going to enjoy, I'm here for. And, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt here. I'm hoping that it does something cool. I assume, I've said this for a while now, but I assume after Secret Wars, we're going to get a soft reset so you can reintroduce a new Tony Stark and a new Steve Rogers and a new Black Widow and all these characters that you are going to have relaunched and rebooted and continue to stay young because that's the franchise and that's who you're going to see at the Disney parks and that's the merch you're selling. So I'm assuming we're going to get some sort of to relaunch with this. But in the meantime, we have Brave New World, and then we have you said what are the other two that they said?
Thunderbolts.
Three movies. Thunderbolts, which trailer looks outstanding.
I went and saw Venom 3 yesterday.
Sorry.
Spoiler alert, I actually enjoyed it. But we saw Brave New World. We saw Thunderbolts trailers, which I've seen them online, but it's different to see them on the big screen. Man, I am so excited for both of these. Thunderbolts just looks fun. And that was another one. People were like, well, what does that have to do with Secret Wars? I'm like, shut up. It was already in the works. It's already filmed. No clue, but they already had it before they announced this new schedule. So chill out. Chill out. But it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. They're bringing back a lot of awesome characters. I'm bummed that Stephen Yeun is not going to be the Sentry, but the fact that we have Bob, who's Bill Pullman's son, who seems to be Bob in every movie he does because he was in Maverick as Bob. I love that he is going to be that character, and I can't wait to see what he does with it. But I'm excited for Thunderbolts. I loved it when it was a comic book. I feel like they're not even trying to do the facade that these are superheroes. They're already, we know who the characters are, so there's no false sense of, well, these are superheroes. Like, no. So I'm excited to see how they pull this off.
I mean, introducing the Sentry is huge because it's the closest you really get to Superman outside of like Hyperion. But that sort of character doesn't really work in the Marvel universe as well as you think it does. So when he shows up, it's a big deal. And the whole deal with the Sentry is that he was a hero that everybody knew, and he was erased from everybody's memories. So everybody had adventures with the Sentry, Bob Reynolds, and he was an established hero of the Marvel universe that never existed. And I'm excited to just see what they do with this and how they tie this into the future of everything, because this is also something with the Sentry having the Void. This is something that can present itself as a new big bad guy that they all go after.
And what's cool is just if you're a comic book person and then you know the name is out there, you know who it is, what it is. But when you see the trailer and you see this random dude in hospital gear, you're like, who is that guy? What is that guy? And it's like, oh boy, you're about to see. This is awesome.
Yeah. I hope it's just done well. And it also, kind of leads into this idea for the Dark Avengers. I think we're going to have to see what comes on with Fantastic Four, but that's really going to be
coming out next year.
Yeah. And I think that's how we're going to see this multiverse stuff. So I think what we're doing is establishing a couple more things in the main timeline before we jump into this, because I think Fantastic Four is going to be a major step, and I think it's going to cover a lot of ground as well as leave us with a lot of questions for the future.
Well, I think we're getting into this area where you alluded to, but Marvel has the ability, and I don't know if they planned this out. Like, I honestly, until we went back and rewatched all these with Endgame and Infinity War coming out, I was like, oh, wow, they just got lucky that all these things came together. And then you go rewatch phase one, you're like, holy shit, no, this was kind of mapped out. Like, they knew what they were doing. So I don't know. But Marvel has so many entities that they can put an Iron Man or a Captain America on the back burner and bring in the Fantastic Four and have them be the focus for a couple years. The X-Men, have them be the focus, even if they really want to go back to the Inhumans. They can do all these things and bring these things back and leave some of these on the back burner, because as you and I have talked about, pre-2008, nobody was talking about Iron Man. Nobody was cosplaying as Iron Man. Nobody gave a shit about Iron Man. And it was like that movie came out, and the next year, Free Comic Book Day, all the kids were Iron Man. And I'm like, I've never seen this before. Like, nobody cared about Iron Man, and now everybody cares about Iron Man.
Dude, Iron Man, not only was Iron Man the first of the MCU, but it was such a wild move to bank everything on that, because, people know Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Hulk, and I mean, thinking back to the early 2000s, maybe those were the household names, but like not everyone knew who Doctor Strange was. And most people did not know Iron Man was a comic book character.
No.
You knew Captain America, I think, too. You could throw in that pile of just like universally known superheroes if you weren't a comic book reader. But like Iron Man was not by any means a household name like Spider-Man or Batman was. So
Well, we
it
talked
was
about in the
crazy to
90s.
see that.
In the 90s, yes, I know a lot of the Image talent left, but that's how desperate Marvel was to try and get their books sold. These are comic books. They couldn't sell Iron Man. So they were reaching out to Image to be like, hey, can you come up with stories and stuff? Because we suck. We can't come up with our own. Nobody's reading this stuff. We need to try and do promotional stuff to get it going, because obviously Spider-Man and X-Men were their big entities. People weren't reading Iron Man at all.
No. And I mean, it's crazy too to think that there was a time when these characters weren't popular, and now it's evolved so much that the movies dictate
Yeah.
how characters' stories and origin stories are rewritten in the comic books, depending on how established that character is to begin with. Obviously, like the mainstay of most of the Avengers are going to remain where it is, but I mean, we've changed a lot of history in the comic books due to the popularity of these movies and stuff like that.
And it's what I really appreciate with Marvel, and I hope DC can figure this out. Marvel has evolved to tell the stories that were almost like based upon, that were in the actual pages of the comic book, and alter them, like Civil War. Civil War is nothing like it was in the comic book, but it's still an amazing story in the movie. It was great. I love how they transferred it and made it better. Infinity War and Endgame, that's not what Thanos did in the comic book. Lady Death's not even in there. But the fact that the movie was so good, and they took the idea or the nugget from the comic book and made it into a very different, very awesome, entertaining movie is fantastic. I don't think DC has figured that out. They're just like, here's what this character can do. Let's make a story. And it's like, that's
Marvel has this ability where they take snippets of origins and snippets of storylines and work them into something that works for the overall world. Whereas watching like the Justice League movie or even like Superman versus Batman, like they're not like you got the costume down, but like that whole interaction is not something that happened. It's the whole movie isn't done in the same way. They just take the characters and then go, well, I'm going to take the character and I'm going to do what I want with whatever. Whereas even like, do you remember at the stuff we used to do when they announced Age of Ultron? I remember Cubby specifically was like, that story's such a weird story. How are they going to do that? And they didn't. It's different than the comic book Age of Ultron. But you start planting the seeds of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and Ultron, and you're taking a name that existed in the books and then snippets of origins and rolling it into this new thing.
And what's cool is they used the characters that they owned at the time. So it was Bruce Banner and Tony Stark. And it's like, where's Hank Pym and Reed Richards? It's like, guys didn't own him at the time, or they may have Ant-Man. I honestly don't know at that time, but he didn't have a movie yet. And you're like, we're going to do Ultron without these people because we can just transfer those abilities to these people. And at the time, I didn't appreciate Age of Ultron as much as I do now. Like, it has held up really well, and it set the stage for Civil War with what's his name, Baron Zemo. The city falling down, whatever, and led to AI with God, man, my brain's not working. Andy Serkis's character going into Black Panther. All these things tied in beautifully. Thank you. All these things tied in beautifully with, at the time, watching Ultron, I was like, my biggest complaint was this isn't Ultron. But I think
but now it's set up but yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the one thing that gives me hope with DC is that it is James Gunn, and he did make millions of people emotionally invested in a talking tree and raccoon, which I remember when Guardians got announced thinking, oh my God, this better be good, or this is going to be dead before it even starts. And now it's maybe the top franchise within the MCU.
It's one of the best for sure.
One thing to make a point of kind of the stuff we're talking about what works and what doesn't work. There's also an update of Marshala Ali's Blade being shelved, not indefinitely, but indefinite hiatus, I guess. And I don't know if it's just me because it's never been my favorite subgenre of superhero books. But I mean, do you think it's the introduction of vampires itself, like that might be keeping things a little bit weird? Like you've done enough in the MCU that like it's plausible that anything can exist. We especially with Werewolf by Night and all this other stuff. Like there are subsections of the world that people don't see if you're not involved with it. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that vampires exist, but is that just like so off base from what we've been getting? What do you think the issues are with this movie getting going?
I think the original big issue was that they got a big name who wanted to do Blade. So they got excited. I don't think they had a story for Blade. And certainly going back to when they announced it to the movies that have come out, I don't see a point where it was like, this would be the perfect time to introduce Blade. I just don't see it. I then think with the latest Deadpool movie, and I don't know what's going behind the scenes. I don't know. There's now this push to have Wesley Snipes come back and play a Blade. And I don't know if they're thinking of handing it off. I don't know what that idea is. Because frankly, the first Blade was really good. It holds up in the sense that it was made in the 90s and you can say it was a 90s movie and it's okay. It's not the best superhero movie you've ever seen. I'm going to be 100% on it. It's better than Howard the Duck. Yes, but it's still a 90s movie at the end of the day. As everybody knows, I appreciate Guillermo del Toro, but I did not like the sequel. I thought, it's not worthwhile. I did enjoy the third one because I was a huge Ryan Reynolds fan before Deadpool. And it has my girlfriend, Jessica Biel. So I did enjoy the third one. I don't know why you would need to make another one. I feel like having Deadpool and Wolverine bring him back was perfect, and then not having him ever again. But I feel like as far as Ali's version of Blade, I just don't feel like they know what to do with it per se. Maybe even having a little fear of, and I don't want to say this necessarily because it's another black character, but Luke Cage, like the TV show was really good, and then they just didn't do anything with it. I'm like,
yeah, man, that first season was so good, and it just falls off so hard.
So I don't know if they just don't know they want to have bigger plans and they don't know what to do with it. Like to me, making that a TV show, Blade, that'd be great because then you're more in like the Werewolf by Night area. You don't have to worry about fitting into Secret Wars. Like one of the worst things to me Marvel has done in recent history was the Eternals as a movie. It's like that's not a good movie. If you made it a TV show, I think that would have made a little more sense, and then you
would have had more time to explain everything.
Exactly. And now you look at it, you're like, how the fuck does that fit in with what Marvel's doing? Because they don't talk about it. All the Celestials we saw don't exist anymore. Somehow that thing on planet Earth is nobody notices it. I don't know, but it's not there. So I don't, and that goes to more with that referenced Blade and the Black Knight, and maybe that's part of it. Is they're like, we don't know where to take these guys because Eternals was such a failure, so we're going to hold off and see what happens.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is with Secret Wars, you feel that everybody's going to get some screen time. You're going to see everybody. And as much as I love Blade and as much as I love like an idea of a Blade movie and stuff, it to me feels like it'll be so out of place to just have him show up with a sword fighting Doom bots or something, that it's just like you haven't got enough of that yet. And I think maybe the secret to keeping the MCU fresh after Secret Wars is you can have overlap, but have everybody overlap in ways that make sense. So you should, I think a Blade TV show is a street level, or even not street level because you're fighting vampires and stuff like that, but like not a earth-shattering,
but like the seedier side of
reason.
things.
Yes.
That to me, that like Echo, I thoroughly enjoyed Echo. I honestly don't know what people thought of it, but I really enjoyed Echo. And it's very similar to the feel of the Netflix Daredevil. And obviously we're getting Daredevil. Hawkeye, just these sort of under the radar, more dirty, even Werewolf by Night is a one-off. I think that is where Blade fits. I think that would be a great area to tell it. And then you have a little more freedom to do what you want with it, because even if it's only an 8-episode arc, that's 8 hours theoretically that you can tell this story. Whereas 2 hours to tell Blade as an updated version, I'm not sure. I'm not
1,000%.
Yeah,
1,000. Like the more time you have, the better. And I think it goes to your point about the Eternals. Like, there's no reason you couldn't have done that as a show. Like, it's not to, and I mean, I don't know how contracts work. I don't know if people are getting paid and everything like that. But like, I would feel that with these streaming services, you're getting a better quality of original content, especially from a brand as big as Disney versus, I don't know, I want to disparage anybody, but like, I assume a Disney streaming service show has a higher budget than a Peacock or a Paramount. You know what I'm saying? So I would feel that, or I would think that actors would be just as likely to get involved with a TV show versus a movie, because you're still getting good quality from Disney, despite what people are saying. I'm talking about production wise. If you're not happy with the story, that's on you or whatever. But production wise, I feel like you're getting more bang for your buck from that.
there's really no
So I
difference.
can't see these people not wanting to be part of it for 8 episodes versus 1 movie. So I don't know. It's a weird little spot to be in, and it does kind of convolute, or not convolute, but it makes it a harder question of how certain people get involved and included going forward with this.
Well, and that's where I want some answers though, because as I posted in our message thread, I was online, YouTube TV, looking at what horror movies were coming out, showing that day, and Blade. But the actor was not Wesley Snipes. It was Mahershala Ali. And I'm like,
yeah,
why are you showing me a Blade that doesn't exist? What the hell is this? And literally, it was freaking me out. Like, I know I get confused at times, but what?
You're like, I'm old, but not that old yet.
I
Hold
know.
on. I'm not trying to.
I will post that in the video so you can see, but it really floored me. Like, what the hell am I doing? And I flicked to it, and it was clearly, obviously, the Wesley Snipes Blade. So I didn't get some.
Somebody put something out there that just got added to the.
Seriously, somebody's messing around me like, ooh, we're gonna fuck with Jimmy.
See if anyone's paying attention.
And I was. Thank you, YouTube.
Well, that being said, bouncing off of introductions, is we have some very preliminary, not official news, reported, not just internet rumored, but it seems to be reported that the idea for the next Marvel movies is going to introduce Rogue and kick off the mutant saga, which I assume, on top of the Fantastic Four, is going to be the next kind of age of Marvel. The MCU is the mutant saga of this. But it looks like we're introducing Rogue as a villain for the Marvels, which would tie into how she gets her powers famously for, the comic books, as she attacks Carol Danvers and messes her up for quite some time. And if you rewatch the original X-Men cartoon, that's a whole episode that they get into with that.
Which is pretty fucked up, because it's her mom, matriarch, mentor, whatever you want to say. And it's like, well, you done her dirty, man, woman, whatever.
Yeah.
So to have, I'm assuming most people were going from the Fox movies of what their knowledge of Rogue is. So to see this, I am so curious for people to react to Rogue's real introduction, if that's the way they go, and be like, wow, you made Rogue a villain. It's like, no. That's what she started as. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if in the comics debut, but when you go through her origin and the way it was written and retold, like if you read the original Secret War, she's with Magneto at that point. She is with the Brotherhood of Evil. She's with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Like, that's you put evil in the name.
Well, even the animation, that's what Xavier is doing, is blocking off the part of her brain that is Carol Danvers, so she can't haunt her. And it's like, that's fucked up, dude.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if you're going to maybe play. We have to see how Secret Wars plays out with bringing the X-Men into the proper sacred timeline and everything like that. But the Marvels ends with one of the Marvels in a X-Men timeline. So I don't know if that's going to be met again in Secret Wars, and then the fallout of Secret Wars will move into Marvels 2 or the third Captain Marvel film. But I'm preliminary report here. I'm thinking this is a good way to kind of introduce this. Yeah, I like the idea of having the X-Men exist before the X-Men exist, if that makes sense.
And I'm excited that they announced another Captain Marvel movie, because I thought the Marvels, it was not the greatest film ever made, but it was highly entertaining. It was worth my time watching. I can't fathom why there was so much hate for it. So to be like, we're making another one. Thank you. Because
I stand by those fight scenes, dude. Those were so well done and choreographed. And the fact that you had that going from 3 different points of view, like throughout the whole thing, it's fun because that first one, no one has a clue what's going on. And then by the time the final fight happens, they're dialed in. And it was such a cool concept. We haven't seen anything like that.
We've talked about this before. I can't imagine being the script supervisor on set and be like, okay, so Carol is taking this punch, and then I got to make sure that Miss Marvel comes in, Kamala, okay, and that I'm like, I would have been fired day one. Be like, I thought Monica Rambeau was in this scene. No, moron, it was Kamala. I'm like, sorry, my bad.
Oh, if that would have been my job to keep track of that. Yeah, I would have been a very quick employee. Like, oh, he's here and he's out.
So her hand was like this. So when we bring it, you got to have her hand like this, and then this hand, and like, nope.
Yeah, I will give praise to that every time we can, because the amount of shit that movie got, it didn't deserve it, especially for those scenes.
No, and it's so funny to me. Like, the special effects were great. If you have a problem with the singing planet, fine, okay, I get it.
That took me out a little bit, but
and the villain. Fine. She wasn't the strongest. Fine. But that wasn't what the impetus of the story was. So to me, it was like, you guys are focusing on the wrong things. Like, this is a good, solid story involving Carol Danvers, Rambeau, and Kamala. That sisterhood and how they're going to get together and work, and then throwing in Kamala's family was hilarious. And then having Samuel, I'm sorry, we're getting on a review of Marvels because I'm pissed off that people hated it so much. It was a good movie.
Like I said, it's not my all-time favorite, but I was entertained. The singing planet threw me off for a minute, but like, whatever, dude, like, we're trying new things. We're seeing what works and what doesn't. And overall, like I said, even if you use that as a blueprint for future stuff, like, the fighting in that movie was some of the best in any of the that's MCU.
From it's like, have you guys seen a bad movie? Because when I see a bad movie, it's like, I can bear, like we just talked about Halloween Resurrection. I forced myself to finish it because you and I committed to do a review of it. Would I watch that again? Probably not.
It's going to be a long time before I put that on again.
Would I watch the Marvels again? Anytime, because it was just entertaining.
I will rewatch the Marvels before I watch Halloween Resurrection. Like, I know that for a fact.
Jim, on that one, are you?
No, I can factually say I will watch the Marvels probably twice before I watch Resurrection again.
Well, I guess that gets to, what do people think is a good movie versus a bad movie? Like, I've seen Batman versus Superman once, because to me, what's your mom's name? Oh my God, me too, is the dumbest goddamn storyline.
It was just like, that's what humanizes you. That's what humanizes him to you.
That's a bad movie.
Yeah,
that is a bad movie. So I don't watch it again. So when people say, "Oh, Marvel sucked," you're a snowflake and or whatever, and I'm like, did you watch the movie? Because it was at least entertaining. I enjoyed it.
Nothing's perfect. Everything's got plot holes. But like you said, we're getting on to how, Marvel's review again. But I mean, back to the idea of introducing Rogue. I think it can do. I assume you're going to see something with Photon or Spectrum, with the X-Men, with Xavier and Hank, to help bridge that gap into the proper timeline. And I think it's going to be a great introduction for Rogue, and it's going to be a way to make her more interesting than just the girl that can't touch people, because
Yeah.
that was the issue with the X-Men movies, is like she just was there and her existence sucked. Like, now that I love Anna Paquin, but it's just like it was just hard for her to be anything because
Well,
you didn't have someone to siphon that from.
the best example is Days of Future Past. She literally had a huge storyline that they cut because they didn't need it.
Yeah.
That to me sums up where Rogue's storyline in the X-Men went.
Yeah. And now you're going to give her something that will, one, power her up and have her be a bigger heavy hitter for the mutants and that universe, but tying it in a way that makes sense.
But you're right. I'm curious, how deep are they going to go? Because obviously we've already mentioned Marvel takes story ideas and makes it different. Are we going to get the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants with the introduction of Rogue, or is it just literally here's this mutant that gloms on to Carol Danvers and Carol Danvers tries to help her, but then it goes bad? Like, I'm very curious.
You're going to have the setup of Miss Marvel being a mutant and Rogue being a mutant and establishing good and bad. And now that we're doing Doom and we're moving away from Kang, and if we're getting into the mutants, you are going to have a good side versus a bad side. And this can be a very subtle way to just draw that line in the sand to show you that there are good and bad, and that the bad is working with a bigger thing. Magneto could be a late stage reveal. You don't know what they're going to do with this. It could be, also leading towards Apocalypse, but you are going to have Xavier versus Magneto for at least 2 movies before you have them come together. So I like the idea of this drawing a line in the sand.
Now, this is an interesting topic that James has brought up before, because they obviously gave Iron Man a new origin story. With Netflix, they gave Punisher a new origin story, meaning they were tied to very specific times in history with war that aged out of what they could be in present day. Magneto's origin is still World War II being in a concentration camp. We are very far removed from that now in modern times. I know he's a mutant and aging wise, but with modern mentality, is that something we can still use as a crutch to be like, this is why he believes in what he believes and why he is so pro-mutant as far as the ruling class, because he existed at a time where Jews were persecuted and killed because they were seen less than human. And he sees that happening with mutants. So are we able to still use that as our origin story? Because it's powerful.
This is going to be one to tiptoe around. So, like, hear me out before anybody jumps to anything. But, like, keeping him Jewish, there's plenty of times in history they can still pull from, like, him being singled out. And, I mean, you can have him with family that survived the Holocaust, or
Yep.
he has one grandfather that ties to that, and just the persecution Jewish people have always gone through. So I assume they will keep that part of the character. I agree with you. The World War II thing is going to be harder and harder to tie in. That bums me out a little bit, because that's something about Magneto that's always made him less of a villain, and more of a what side of history are you standing on with? Well, not even that, just you understand where he's coming from more, because he's like, I'm not taking chances because my family was murdered in one of the worst times in human history by people who just didn't like that I existed. And now you're getting it again with the mutants. So I assume that's still going to play into it, but you're right. It's going to be harder to tie it in directly to have Eric in World War II Germany.
And it's you 100, especially with the relaunch of the X-Men, meaning First Class, when they show that with Kevin Bacon and like they kill his mom and try and bring out his mutant ability, and Kevin Bacon doesn't give a shit about humanity. He's just thrilled to see him react with the metal. And you are able to understand why Eric goes back and forth what we perceive as being good or bad. It's like he's not doing things that are good or bad. He's doing things that he perceives to protect himself and his people. And it's awesome in that reference, especially, and we need to pick up our X-Men reviews again, but as it goes further along into the lesser good movies like Apocalypse, he still continues that back and forth where I'm trying to live a peaceful life, man. I'm trying to do what's right, but they keep coming after me. so I got to protect my family. And it's like, well, would you do anything different? No, you would do everything you could to protect yours and what you own. So is he really a bad guy? So I really do like that. And you're right. Is there anything as powerful as that World War II moment of him being dragged into a concentration camp? I can't think of one.
No, I can't
Iron
either.
Man, what happened to him? Dude, that's powerful. You can change the war, not a big deal. Punisher, same thing. Go from Vietnam to, I can't remember exactly which Iraq war they picked with the latest Frank Cancel in the Netflix, but I don't know.
I will say Punisher, especially what they've done to him recently in the comics, that's a hard one to walk back. So I'm interested to see what they do with live action Frank Castle, because they did a final series, what they call the final series of Frank Castle as the Punisher. And it's revealed that he has been sought out by the Hand for basically his entire life, because this wasn't just something that happened in the Marines or at the park when his family is murdered, but he has always been a violent person with no outlet. He's basically been a muzzled psychopath his entire life because he knows what he's doing he's not supposed to do. But the big reveal is that they show basically he's made the new beast by the Hand. He's killing. He says he'll only kill guilty people. He's not killing innocents. So he still has this like skewed, view of justice. But basically, they bring back his wife. They try to bring back his kids, and they can't. But it's revealed that he had been distant and quiet and not really a family man for quite some time. And that day at the park, minutes before his family is murdered, she's like, "I'm taking the kids to my mom's, and you'll get visitations, but like you're not a good person, Frank." And he's like, "What are you talking? Like, we're not doing that, like whatever." And then his family gets killed. So now he has this skewed sense of justice of like, my family was taken from me. And I was like, dude, your family was leaving you. You just use that as a scapegoat to continue being a violent, shitty person. So and you understand the reason they did this is because the last decade, the Punisher logo has been opted by police officers and all this other shit, which is just not who that character is and not something anybody should look up to. So they had to kind of do this hard thing with this character because they can't continue to have people thinking that this is like a proper sense of justice.
That's one of my favorite panels is where Frank Castle is saying, you want an icon, you want to look up to somebody, go to Cap. I'm not your guy. And I'm like,
yeah, he takes the Punisher sticker off the cop car and he's like, this is not, you're supposed to be, I'm worse than you and you can't look up to me. And they had to do this for whatever reasons, but I'm interested to see how live action Frank Castle is portrayed going forward, because it was a hard book they did to establish this. And I just can't see Frank Castle coming back. Oh no, it was a jump, dude. It was a big thing. And
there's been some like Scott Snyder when he basically reworked Batman and Gotham with the Court of Owls, and it was like, oh my god, you just blew my mind. And that Bruce Wayne had no idea there was this other society running all of Gotham for a character that's been around for like almost 100 years.
Yeah,
awesome the way you did that. It could have gone wrong big time. Whereas something like this with Frank Castle just turning it on your ear, and it's like, it hurts my heart. I don't know, but it's like
wild.
But I understand why. Totally understand.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing. So it's interesting to see that not only he's coming back, but like I said, these shows dictate a lot of stuff in the comics. So like they say Frank Castle's done, but like I have to assume you'll see him back in a Punisher, shirt, dispensing his justice in the MCU again, and it's just gonna be interesting how they handle that in the comics versus the popularity of the show.
And that's hard because that show on Netflix was so good.
Oh,
and the fact that they're coming back, John Barenthal is coming back. It's so awesome, so good. Oh man, I hate people.
We all do.
Yeah. It's like, come on.
Yeah. I don't know, man. There's a lot in front of us with the.
That's what's exciting. I know people. I don't know. We're getting excitement again. And I know we had excitement this year with Deadpool and Wolverine, but I think you, me, the Nerd Alert crew were dealing with so much negativity with the movies that had come out since Endgame that to have more of a positive spin going forward, I'm excited to have that again, because I don't know why people hated these last couple phases, but to me, they were still entertaining. I'm excited to see where we're going further, because now we're getting closer to the things that I really want to see, which is like the X-Men, because that was my jam. We do have another Spider-Man. Sony and Marvel decided they like making money again, so we're getting more Spider-Man movies. I think he signed up for 4 more. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So we're getting more of that. But we're seeing more positivity, I guess. I don't know.
I think that's the thing is I hope they learn their lesson storytelling wise, and that we don't fall into just the echo chambers and negativity that is Twitter, because like that app exists just for people to vent and talk shit on. And I hope that we don't lose characters due to that. I just hope we learn more cohesive storytelling for bringing more people in.
And we can have fun. Like She-Hulk was fun. Why is there hate? It was just fun.
You know, it was a fun show. I rewatched that not long ago, and I was like, this is still great.
Yeah.
Love this fucking show.
Love it. Oh, and at some point we're getting Young Avengers, which I'm excited for, because I rewatched Hawkeye and saw the ending. I'm like, love it. Do it.
Let's do that. Yep. I'm ready for that as well. So we'll see. I mean, I assume that will be a Disney Plus series. I think that'd be the smartest way to go, but
Perfect.
we'll see what happens.